The big feast. Whack! Daniel's stone axe struck the wood, bounced more than it split. He stared at the mark it left, barely moved, then a crack, then wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. To humans, the wood would have looked like a stubborn stick. To nomads, it was a log. Daniel raised the axe again. Whack! Still not enough. Around him, other nomads, young, dragged branches, loaded small wagons, found with pieces of firewood that seemed determined not to break. Daniel breathed hard. I thought being grown meant people stopped ordering you around. A few of the others laughed. Porky stood nearby with his own axe, working on another piece that kept twisting away from him. Every time he swung, he hunted the food, Porky said. He swung. Whack! Now we gotta chop the firewood too. Another young nomad grunted as he pulled a wagon over a root. Ain't this supposed to be our celebration? The other workers nearby kept chopping. They didn't answer right away, but they heard every word. Daniel's father stood a few steps away, watching without saying much. He had been working longer than all of them, but he still moved with quiet strength. His hands were rough from years of carrying, cutting, building, and repairing. After another complaint slipped out, he stepped forward. Give me that! Daniel looked at him. I got it. His father held out his hand. Daniel passed him the axe. The older man set his foot, raised the stone blade, and brought it down. Whack! The wood split cleaner than any of theirs ever had. A few of the young men went quiet. He raised the axe again. Whack! Another clean split. Then on the next swing, his shoulder pulled wrong. He froze. Not long, just long enough. His hands tightened around the handle. His jaw tightened up. The axe lowered slowly. Daniel saw it first. Paul! His father shook his head like it wasn't nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Porky looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at the pile of wood still waiting. Something changed in the air at that time, and it was their mind. No one made a speech. It wasn't necessary, because Daniel stepped forward and took the axe back, but this time he didn't complain. Porky grabbed another piece of wood and set it on his right. The other young nomad moved too. One pulled a wagon closer, another one stacking split logs. Two more carried heavier pieces together instead of trying to drag them along. The work did not become easy, but it became different. There was rhythm now. Axes rose, axes fell, wagons filled, wood piles grew. The older workers watched for a while, then joined where they needed to, not to carry the whole load, but to guide it. By the time the sun leaned higher through the branches, the young men were breathing hard. Their arms were sore, their clothes was dusty, and with bark chips all over them. During a quiet break, the older fathers called them together. They spoke for a while, not loudly, not even angrily. The young man stood among the split wood and loaded the wagons, listening. Near the end, one of the fathers said, to the young and to the tribes, give food, shelter, teaching. He looked across their faces. To the grown, it gives trust, work, responsibility. Then he let the words settle for a while. And what is given more is expected to carry more. Back near the cooking hollow, Rain worked beside her mother. The feast meat had been brought in baskets, wrapped in leaves and tied with cord. Squirrels, rabbits, small birds, bundles of crickets and grasshoppers, already sorted and clean. Rain's mother laid a squirrel across the prep board and showed Rain where to hold. Pull steady, she said. Not hard, steady. Rain held the hide while her mother worked in the loose with a small strap bone blade. The hide peeled back slowly. Rain made a face. Her mother noticed. You want the feast? You learn what comes before the feast. Rain nodded again and tried again. This time, she held better. The hide came free. Rain lifted it carefully. Should this go in the compost? Her mother turned real fast. Compost? Rain froze. Her mother took the hide from their hands. No, this goes for winter coats and blankets and pouches and cushions and liners. Maybe a pouch if it dries right. Rain looked at the hide differently then. Not waste. Something waiting to become useful. Rain reached for another piece from the board, a small hip bone, and held it over the compost basket, although she was getting ready to throw it in. Her mother caught her wrist. Rain! Don't put that hip bone in the compost. Rain blinked. How come? Her mother took the bone and held it between her hands. How do you think we make shovels? Rain looked at the bone, then at the small digging tool hanging by the wall. The handle was wrapped in a cord. The scoop was pale and curved. She smiled a little. Oh. Her mother dropped the hip bone into a separate basket. Compost is for peelings, stems, spoiled greens, and things that the ground can eat. Bones are tools if you know what to make from them. Rain nodded. Her mother pointed to another bowl. The hearts and the livers, they stay here. That's for dinner in our home. Rain looked towards the larger basket. And the rest? The feast cooks fresh. Her mother said, meat is best when the hunt is close. Rain worked slower after that, not because she was tired, but because she was starting to see things differently. Before the wood crew made it back, the pit crew was already working on the cooking grounds. To the humans, the pieces they carried would bend like rocks. To the nomads, they were stones, heavy ones. Two young builders rolled one into a place with a branch used as a lever. Another dragged a rope around a flat stone and rolled it while two others guided into line. One careful young builder had marked out 10 smaller circles. He placed each stone with care. Another young nomad stood nearby, staring at the pattern. Why 10? The careful builder didn't look up. Small fires cook better, he said. He pressed the stone deeper into the dirt. My dad said 10 pits. The other boy looked at the work, still waiting. 10 circles, 10 sets of stone, 10 fires to feed. Then he looked at the large open space in the middle of the cooking ground. Or the careful builder finally looked up. The other boy spread his arms wide. One big pit. One big fire pit, that is. The careful builder asked, one fire? The boy said, one roast. Stack the stones, and we're done. He grinned. Then we can go play. The careful builder frowned. My dad said 10, though. And my back says 1. A few of the others laughed. The careful builder looked at the tent circles again, then at the pile of stones, then opened the ground. If it looked faster, It did look easier, and after all, the feast was for everybody. One fire for the tribe. That sounded right enough. So the 10 circles disappeared. The stone moved inward. The pit grew wider. They worked faster now, proud of themselves for finding what felt like it was better. One builder tried to lift a stone higher along the side of the wall. Bigger the fire, the deeper the walls, he said, straining. His foot slipped in the mud. For one breath, he fought for balance. Then slip! He landed face first into the wet dirt. The whole pit crew burst out laughing. He pushed himself up the mud, dripping from his chin. Someone called it Big Pit. Another one shouted, Big Landing. Even the careful builder laughed then. Someone else pointed and yelled, Mudface! He hated it immediately, but the name had a way of surviving in the tribe. A few days later, they shortened it to Mud. A few years later, everyone used it. By the time he was old, most of the younger nomads didn't even remember why. Only that once, 1 year ago, he fallen building a pit. By the time the wood crew returned, the large pit was finished. The young men came pulling wagons stacked with split logs. Their arms were sore, but they pulled with a better spirit than when they had left. Porky saw the pit first. That's new. Daniel wiped the sweat from his neck. That's big. The pit crew stood nearby trying to look proud and not like they had been playing moments later. Wood was unloaded. The kindling had stacked. One of the firewood elders slowed beside the other elder as they looked over the pit. The first elder squinted. Huh? The second followed his glaze. Different way of doing it, huh? The first elder watched the boys carrying wood towards the wide stone circle. But I tend wood, he said, not cooking stones. The second elder gave a small grunt that could have meant agreement or tiredness. Then both of them went back to their work. The fire was laid. The first sparks caught. Flame curled up through the kindling. The wood, the boys watched, and it rose. As the sun began to lower, elders moved through the village, calling families towards the cooking grounds. Mothers came first, carrying wrapped food and baskets of herbs. Girls followed with bowls, roots, greens, bundles tied with cord. The air filled with voices. Not shouting, not chaos. A working kind of excitement. Rain walked through beside her mother with a basket held in both hands. Inside were prepared pieces of squirrel, herbs, and a few wrapped bundles of roasting. When they reached the cooking ground, several women slowed. One mother looked at the pit. Bigger than last year. Another tilted her head, studying it. My work is cooking, she said. After a moment, not asking why men changed the stones. That settled it even for the moment. Food was brought forward. Bundles was passed from the hand. Meat was laid near the heat. Herbs was rubbed in. The pit pick began doing what the boys had promised it would do. It cooked. And because it worked, no one asked too many more questions. The village gathered as the light turned gold. Children watched from the edges. Other nomads settled on roots and low seats. The young 20s stood, little taller than they had that morning. They had hunted, they had chopped, they had hauled, they had helped build. Even Porky, who had started the day complaining, found himself carrying extra wood without being told. Daniel did the same. Every now and then, he glanced towards his father's shoulder. His father noticed once and gave him a small nod. Not praise exactly. Something better. Trust. For a while, everything felt right. The big pig glowed. The food smelled good. The work had begun a celebration. Then one of the men entered into the cooking ground and stopped. He was the father who had been given the pit instructions earlier that day. His eyes moved across the wide stone circle, across the single large fire, across the food already cooking. His face changed. Not anger at first, concern. One pit? He found his son near the edge of the pit crew. What happened to the 10? His son's shoulders got tense. For a moment, he looked towards the others. Then the words came out too fast. It wasn't my idea. The other boys looked at him. He pointed before he could stop himself. They thought it would be easier. The father stared at him. Not long, but long enough. Gather them. The son swallowed his spit, then called the others over. The pit builders came slowly, their earlier pride fading as they stood before the man who had given them the instructions on how to build the pits. Behind them, the fire crackled. Food cooked. The village continued arriving. The choice had already been made. The father looked at the large pit again, then at the boys. You changed my directions. No one answered. Why? Why would you do that? The Kelfer builder looked down. Mudface rubbed dry mud from his sleeve. Finally, one of them said, We thought it'd be faster. The father let out a slow breath. The fire popped behind him. Smoke curled up towards the evening air. He did not tell them to tear it down. He couldn't. The food was cooking. The village had gathered. The choice was already burning. So he gave them what he could still give them, a lesson. A faster way isn't always the wiser one. The boys stood quiet. Porky and Daniel heard it too because they stood nearby. The father looked from the fire to the wide wall stone, changing the direction because it seems easier. The smoke rose higher, can cost more than air, can cost more than anything. No one said anything. Not right away. The feast had begun. The people were gathering. The meat was cooking. And above the wide new pit, smoke climbed in the evening sky, higher than usual, thicker than usual. The feast was not over. Not yet. If you enjoyed this story, share it with another traveler beneath the trees, and subscribe for more stories from the world of nomads.